So hello there everybody and welcome. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you the general process of the register and login functionality. So first of all, we have a register and login and a database. So now the username and the password is being input from the front end, and the username is going to be stored directly into the database, but the password is going to go through something called a hash function. So this hash function is actually a one-way function, which means any password that we put in here, it can only go one way. So you can't get the original password after you have hashed it. So it has basically gone through a dead end. Okay, so now we can save it into the database because that's more secure. So why do we go through that stress? Because in case a hacker or something gets access to our database, then he won't just be able to access the passwords. He will have to go through this hash function, and that will take him a long time. So that is not the end of the security process. We'll see the other ones later. So now let's dive into these hash functions and actually know what it's about. So the hash function, there are different examples of hash functions like SHA-256, SHA-1, SHA-512, and MD5, etc. There are actually a lot of them. So as I said, these are one-way functions, which means once something is passed through it, it can come back. For example, now we have a string called hello. If you pass it through a hash function, it's going to output something like this. This is actually a real MD5 hash function that I used. So the hello string here came out with something like this. So if you look at this, you will never be able to get the hello. No matter how you try, you can't get this back. But you may be asking, why are we saving the password that way since we can't get it back? I'll show you that in a second. But I just want to show you that even if you have slight changes, just like this one is a capital letter and this one is a small letter, it outputs something completely different. You won't even know that they are from the same string. Hopefully you get the point of hash functions. The reason this is actually like this is because a hash function collects bytes. So this capital H here has completely different bytes data from this hello here. So that is the reason for this. But anytime you put in hello, this is the same thing that will always come out. So I think that should be it. The next one I want to talk about is sorting. So sorting is basically adding another hash to this hash and hashing it again. That may be confusing, but let me just go deeper. So this hash, you can see that it's, I think, 48 characters or so. That is the same character length with this one. So even if you have like a whole full description here, hello, my name is this or that, it will still output a hash that is still this length. So that is one nice thing about hash functions. It outputs a hash of fixed length. Whenever we create a sort, most likely it's a random number just like this. So we hash this random number and it gives us something like this. Then we can add this thing to the password and hash it again. So if we have a sort like this and add it to the password, whatever the password the person gives here, or we can even hash the password and add it to the salt and hash it again, and that will be our hash password. So the reason we are doing all this and going through all this stress is because a hacker, even if he gets access to the database, for example, if my password is password and your password is password, and we hash it, it will bring out the same hash. So the hacker will just check if he manages to crack one password, every other password in that database that has that same hash will be termed to have the same value. That is the reason why we sort, because the sort is randomly generated, and my sort is randomly generated and it adds it to my password and hashes it. The hash is going to be completely different from you that your sort is generated and added to your own password. So hopefully you get the whole point of this hashing and sorting thing. So when that hash password is generated, it is saved to store in the database. That is everything that is going on here in this hash function. So the next one here is the login process. So when a username and a password is gotten from the front end or from the user, we're going to check the database for that username, and we're going to just bring out the hashed password. Okay, so whatever the person's username, email, whatever is passed in there, we're going to bring out the person's suspected hashed password. So the password will look something like this, completely random. Then we hash the password inputs. That's the person's password that he just inputted in, because the person is trying to log in, you understand? And the person wants to gain access to the system. So that password he puts in there, the normal password 123 or whatever, we're going to pass it through that same hash function. And yes, this hash here is going to contain the salt. So it's going to pass in through that hash function. And remember, it's going to bring out a hashed password input. So whatever the person inputs there is going to bring out a hash for that. Then we're going to check if that hash that I just brought out is the same with the hash password that was stored in the database. So if it's the same, which means the passwords are exactly the same. Remember, even if you change something as small as the case of the letters or even the dot, anything very slight, the entire hash is going to change. So if the hash is exactly the same, then access granted, the person can now access the system. Also you may be asking, yes, but what of the salt? How do we always get the salt? That's actually quite more advanced, and I don't want to go too in depth, but just try to wrap your head around this. Essentially, for the record, I just want to say that the salt is most likely added and separated by a dot. So whenever the hash password is gotten from the database, the function knows how to separate the salt from the actual hash value so that it will use it in the hash process. If you don't understand anything I just said, just don't worry about it. It's a bit more advanced and you may not even have to worry about it. So with all that done, let's go into the authenticated session. First of all, we have a client and a server as usual. So now the client is going to have some kind of request. So it's going to send the request to the server, and on the server it's going to get all those request data, and now it's going to add something to it. It's going to add an authentication token. So this auth token, it can be inside the headers, it can be just here, it can be almost anywhere, but it's going to, the bottom line is that it's going to add something in the request that the client sent. And the reason why it's adding this thing is so that it's going to be able to keep track of who is logged in and who is not logged in. Most of the time, this auth token is going to have like an expiring date or something like that. That is why if you go to some sites, you see that sometimes you get logged out, and that's because the session has expired. Hopefully you get the point. So now it's going to use all this data and construct a response. Then when he sends it back to the client will store it and use it in his next request. So as I said before, most likely this is stored in cookies, headers, or just as an authentication token like this. So I think that should be it. Thanks for watching again. Hopefully you learned something new today, and I'll see you in the next one.